good afternoon. Welcome to today's IG Live, Ask the Experts. Today we're going to be talking dating with our dating expert, Dr. Christie Kederian. The Date Dr. Christie. I'm so excited to have her on our live today. I just finished reading her book. It's called 10 Dates to Your Soulmate. I am going to introduce you first, Christie, and then I'm going to ask you to join. I see that you've requested. Dr. Christie Kederian is a nationally renowned relationship expert, therapist, speaker, and thought leader. She has an extensive career as a professional matchmaker and relationship expert for eHarmony and Match.com affiliate company. Christie has helped thousands of people create lives they love and find love they deserve. So her newest book is called 10 Dates to Your Soulmate. And it's fantastic. It's all about how to apply strategy to finding and building your next best relationship, really. And we're going to talk about, go through all your questions you have today. So I hope you're going to take this opportunity to ask Dr. Christie your dating and love questions, because she is a wealth of information and just an excellent coach. There you are.
Hi.
Thank you for being with us, Dr. Christie.
Thank you for having me. It's always so fun to chat with you.
It is so fun. Okay, so we're going to jump in. The questions go by. It's like wildfire. No, well, that was the wrong word. I'm so sorry. It's like it's like
Rapid
rapid fire.
fire. Rapid
Rapid
fire,
fire.
yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, how can I shift from seeking validation in dating to feeling more self-assured and grounded? This is a good question.
Yeah, I love this question because I think sometimes, especially with how dating apps work, there's like a quick dopamine hit when like someone likes you, and sometimes we're looking for that kind of subconsciously when we should be really looking for like that deeper connection. So I would say what you really want to do is first look at the areas that you're seeking validation in. Sometimes people have values around, maybe physical appearance or their success level, or their job, their career, their academics. So kind of seek out that area where you're like, I'm looking for approval in this area, and notice if there's a thread or pattern in your life. So maybe from a young age you felt like your family was very high achieving, and you felt like in order to have like worth or approval, I really need to like, be the best student, straight A's, etc. Maybe they were very appearance focused, and kind of notice where that story's coming from, because often when we're looking for that validation, it's trying to kind of solve like a story from our childhood and resolve this kind of inner desire that we haven't gotten met. And so when you can kind of notice where the root cause of that is, then you can go back to that and focus on how can I build this within myself. So maybe it's an area that you feel like a lack of confidence in because you want to know more about it. So with a lot of women I work with, for example, they kind of feel like they want that validation around like finances or something like that because they want to be more financially literate and not necessarily depend on relationship for that. That might also be the place where they're feeling insecure. So I really recommend kind of noticing, is this an area that I do want to improve or work on myself in? And that can sometimes build that confidence that you're seeking from someone else. You can give that to yourself from working on that area for yourself as well.
I really like that. You want to go
Mhm.
into dating feeling like I'm good on my
Mhm.
own. And if you are recognizing the places where, like you said, you're feeling insecure or need validation, it's like, what can you do within yourself to
Mhm.
right that?
Yeah,
Right. Not looking
exactly.
externally for that validation.
Yeah.
How do I attract people who align with my values and goals for a meaningful relationship?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a great question too, because sometimes people tell me, I keep attracting people that aren't what I'm looking for. I keep
Hmm.
attracting emotionally unavailable people, or the opposite of kind of like how I am. And sometimes when we're attracting someone who doesn't align with who we are, it's because we've kind of tolerated or made it acceptable to have people in our lives in other relationships that don't really align with our own values. So I always say, kind
Oh,
of look at your own relationships. Maybe it's within friendships. Do you tend to be someone who attracts or tolerates people that really don't align with you? Maybe there's like toxic friendship dynamics. Maybe they're mean to you, or like you kind of have put up with these sorts of relationships. Because generally, if you're really attracting people who have similar values, high standards for how you're being treated in all your relationships, it's going to be very obvious when you're attracting people that don't align with that, or that aren't treating you how you want to be treated in a relationship, etc. So that's really the thing that you want to focus on, is how do I curate relationships around me that actually feel how I want to feel in my future relationship romantically, so that it's very obvious when it aligns and very obvious when it doesn't. And when you're looking for kind of attracting someone who's the opposite of you, ask yourself, what does that person have that I really want? And similar to how I answered the first question, how can I kind of work on that in myself? So the kind of classic example is like, if you're the bookworm like girl and then you're always kind of going for the bad boy, maybe there's a sense of adventure or something that you're longing for in your own life that you're hoping someone else can kind of fill that for, rather than you doing that work on yourself. Maybe it's time for you to start incorporating play and fun into your life, so you're not feeling like you need the complete opposite of who you are in a relationship.
right. So if somebody's online dating, Christy, and your top values, right? Like that
Mhm,
you want in a partnership.
mhm,
I want somebody who's um, really like who's close with like people in their lives. They've got
mhm,
friends, they've got um, hopefully close family
mhm,
relations,
yeah,
and because that's really important to
mhm,
you, right? You
mhm,
want somebody that's growth minded. That's one of your
mhm,
top values.
yeah.
So are you putting that? You're putting that in your profile, right? Let's say you're
Mhm.
online dating.
Yes, exactly. So you're really wanting to create your profile in a way that's like, these are my core things, and create your filters around that too. I think dating apps have a great option where, especially if you're on like a premium version, you can self-select, okay, I want someone who shares this value, or has this education level, or has this faith or political leaning. So people aren't even coming into your orbit unless they straight up like kind of fit that category. And then I would say what you want to write is like really front facing with your values and who you are. And that might be off putting to some people, but you're focusing on quality people, not just quantity.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Somebody in the chat is asking this question.
Hmm.
Is hoping for a happily ever after realistic? Because I do believe that ultimately relationships come into our lives as teachers mirrors.
Hmm.
But is
Yeah.
happily ever after realistic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that it depends on your definition of happily ever after. I think
Mm,
sometimes people enter a relationship thinking this is going to be perfect and there's going to be no problems and we're just always going to connect and just naturally like, love each other. And the reality is that, I always say this, that, and I talk about this in my book too, it's that soulmates, I really think you don't find like that perfect person. You create that relationship, that soulmate relationship that you're looking for. And then when it comes to happily ever after, the great thing about a relationship is that you are a co-creator in what that looks
mhm.
like. And so you can really invest in creating a dynamic that you love, that fits that definition for you. But just know that the beauty sometimes comes from that imperfection. And, when there's the
Yes.
struggle, then that's when you can kind of get to that point. And I think sometimes people have different goals for relationships. Sometimes they think they want to be in a relationship because it will make them happy. And that could be a good goal for you. I think generally you should be happy in a
Mm,
relationship most of the time, but happiness is a fleeting emotion. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, it's like we don't ever arrive at a happiness place. It's like something we feel, and sometimes we feel sad, and this is all part of the human experience. So I might have a different goal for your relationship. Maybe instead of happiness, focus. Maybe it's like connection or feeling seen. And so that you're not only trying to kind of have like, a toxic positivity view of life, because you're not always going to be happy in life or a relationship. But I would say it's more focused on, maybe I want to focus on building a relationship that's grounded in connection and growth and, whatever that is,
Yes.
authenticity.
How can I challenge and release the belief that I need to change myself in order to be loved in a relationship?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a really challenging thing for a lot of people. So just want to normalize
Yes.
that, you're not alone. I think sometimes people, we feel like we want that kind of what we were talking about earlier, that validation and approval from others. So we feel like we have to be a certain way in order for them to love us. And this also kind of is deeply rooted in childhood, because we have kind of interpreted, whether our parents or caregivers intended or not, that in order to feel love, I have to do this, I have to be obedient, I have to be successful, whatever that is. And then we take that on into our lives and our romantic relationships and relationships in adulthood. So I would say the thing that you want to focus on is, creating a relationship dynamic where you can feel and communicate that love in an unconditional way. And obviously, this is always a goal for us, and it's hard to um, really live out that goal, but keeping that the standard can be a really positive thing. But the first thing you want to do is give that to yourself. I always say, like, we reject other people in the ways that we reject ourselves. So if someone is saying something to you, like, you're not good enough in this way or that way, or it's like hitting a nerve for you, that means that you actually believe that about
Mm.
yourself too. And so that's where the first part of that work starts. Because if someone is saying you're not enough in a certain way and you don't believe it, you would say, oh, that's not true, I am.
Hmm.
But if you do start believing that, then it means like you might have to kind of rewire that yourself. And I think a good place to do that is getting some work in therapy, kind of figuring out where that belief came from and why you might be attracting relationships that solidify that belief that you have.
Hmm. I also think, Dr. Christie, that social media. I also think there's like coaches out there that are not. I don't think it's good advice to say like you have to be perfectly healed before
Yeah.
you can be loved in a relationship.
So
It's like
true.
that is
Yeah.
absolute BS.
Yeah,
Like
I
we're not
100%
fully
agree.
healed. Like all of
Mm-hmm.
us have stuff to heal, and
Yeah.
that is the journey of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't love another person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like I just maybe it's just like if you're in a place in your life where you're like, okay, I really have to work on this in order for me to be the most loving person I can be in my next relationship, then that's your time to step back and be like, okay, this is my time right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you're at that place where you're just like, I'm good,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm not fully healed and that's not realistic. But I'm willing to put myself out
Mm-hmm.
there and be in a relationship.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that kind of I have to wait till I'm fully healed before I'm in a
No,
relationship is a complete lie. I think the reality is that the healing happens often in the context of a
it
relationship.
sure
And
does.
so when people
Hmm.
are telling me, "Oh, I'm going to wait to date because I'm still healing," I'm like, sometimes that's appropriate and you want to kind of have knowledge about your patterns and what's going on, but the work happens like when you're in the ring, right? You're in the arena, you're getting triggered. That's when you really need the support to figure out, okay, here's what's happening. If not, then you might start thinking, oh, I'm good. I have a lot of clients like this. Oh, I'm securely attached, I'm good, but I haven't even tried dating for like a decade. Well, we don't really know if you're good or if you're just kind of comfortable in that isolation, but you're still wanting that relationship. It's going to be sometimes scary work, but also really important.
That's actually a really good point
Yeah.
because if you're I'm pretty sure that John Kim posted about this
Hmm.
yesterday, is like you're not going to you said this in your book, you're
Hmm.
not going to have that awareness of your triggers, of your
Hmm.
attachment stuff until you're in a relationship. Like
100%.
when you're
Yeah.
single
Hmm.
and like you're
Hmm.
not going to have that stuff come up.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
that's yeah.
So true.
How do I recognize the difference between healthy boundaries and being too picky when dating?
Yeah. Love this question. I specialize with the too picky people because I
Yes,
think
yes.
sometimes, I think we have to honor that it comes from a good place. You have,
High
these desires and you want to,
standards.
yeah, you want to protect yourself. Really, that's where that comes from. More of that avoidant attachment kind of stems from there. And so, what I always say is that you want to kind of create your standards list, kind of the things you're looking for, and then ask yourself why. Sometimes people don't ask themselves, like, why do I want this thing in a potential partner? Sometimes
Hmm.
people just kind of assume like, oh, everyone should want someone who's wealthy or, has this education or whatever. Why not? But really, when you get to know your why, then you'll know, is this coming from an authentic place or is this coming from a protective, like, I don't want to get hurt place? And so that, it's good to keep that there, but it's not necessarily the thing you want driving the bus. I always say anxiety can be on the bus, but it's not going to be in the driver's seat. So you want to listen to it. You don't want to turn that off completely because that's there to protect us. We're wired that way to notice when there's threat or danger or whatever. So when you create that list and you're being picky, that's coming from a good place. But really, the thing that you want to focus on is saying, hey, like, I want to make sure these standards are really authentic to me and what I'm looking
Hmm.
for, and not just things I've adopted from other people's opinions or society's beliefs or anything like that.
Excellent. Love
Yeah.
that. Is it anxiety and fear driving this,
Hmm.
or is it what place is it coming from? That's
Yeah.
that's awesome. What are the biggest mistakes people make when trying to find a truly compatible partner? Oh, there's probably a lot, Christy.
Yeah, well, great question. I think that sometimes people kind of veer on one side or the other. So they're either kind of in the boat of opposites attract, and I want kind of that you complete me dynamic, or they're looking for someone who's like exactly how they are, exactly what they're looking for. They're not willing to kind of notice how people can complement each other. They don't have to have all the same interests and hobbies that I do. Might be nice if they like doing, the things you like doing, but that's not necessary. And sometimes that makes the relationship kind of boring or like actually not as fun and fulfilling. But I think what people get wrong a lot of times is that they care more about things that, that they think will make someone compatible rather than what actually will make them compatible with
Right.
someone. So I think that we have to focus on the true components of compatibility and like, okay, what's actually going to matter in making my relationship like healthy and compatible versus, oh, I think it would be nice if we both like traveling or playing pickleball, whatever, when actually it could be okay to have different hobbies, but it might not be okay to have fully different values and faith alignment or whatever that is.
I really like that. This reminds me of, like, I was talking to one of my best friends about a man that she was
Mhm,
dating. She's no longer dating him.
mhm,
They were compatible in a lot of
mhm,
ways. Like it's just, that's the thing, is that you could be dating somebody and you're having like an amazing time. There's so
mhm,
much joy, the conversation's
mhm,
flowing, you're attracted physically, you're both invested in your families and your friends. But then there are the things that
mhm,
are very important
mhm.
that you cannot not ignore.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know like, he was not in a place to give her more time or prioritize
Mhm,
her. He had other stuff going on. It wasn't his. And so, like, that's a
mhm.
misalignment right there.
Yeah.
We're compatible,
Mhm.
but not
Yeah.
in that very, very important thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think thinking about those things ahead of time is really important because sometimes people don't really think about them and then they get into a relationship or commit to someone or whatever that is and then realize, oh, actually that thing was important to me and I didn't think about how
Yes.
important it was. But if you
And
know
you
that ahead of time, it
Yes,
helps.
and you say this in the book. You
Mhm.
talk about, like, if you like, there's compromise in relationships, but if you're
Mhm.
sacrificing
Mhm.
yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like, or your happiness, then,
Yeah.
like, that's gonna come back to
Right.
get, it's the resentment, everything, right? You can't.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How do I stop attracting emotionally unavailable people and
Hmm.
start recognizing partners who are ready for commitment?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this kind of goes along with what we were saying before of like, okay, what are the things that you're really looking for? And noticing, okay, where am I looking for a partner? Maybe you feel like keep attracting people that aren't looking for commitment, but the place that you're meeting these people are at like a bar or a concert. Not to say that you can't go to a bar or a concert if you're looking for a commitment, but they're not at places where people are intentionally looking for
Mm,
another person. So I
good
think being a
point.
lot more intentional about where you're finding the person can also lead you to people that are really looking for what you're looking for. So if you go to, a curated singles event, if you work with a matchmaker, if you're on a dating app where you're putting, hey, I'm looking for a committed relationship or marriage or whatever, then likely you're going to weed out a lot of those people that in real life you might not really be able to know if they're really looking for the same things you're looking for.
I just really like that.
Yeah.
You've also got a lot of good questions to ask in your book around identifying if somebody is emotionally available, right?
Yes.
So absolutely. How do oh, sorry. What's the best way to communicate that I'm looking for a partner without scaring them off? I think it's just clear communication, like you said, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
I
what
think
do you
that's
have
the
to
thing.
lose? Like,
Yeah. I think that's really the thing that if you're going to clearly communicate what you're looking for and it scares them off, then they're probably not the person for you. But I do think, and I talk a lot about how to do this in the book, that there are ways to kind of learn a lot more about a person a little bit more indirectly than there are like, hey, I'm looking for getting married next week when you're on a first date,
yeah,
So those sorts of things, yeah, that might kind of be off-putting to communicate something in a certain way. So it's all about how you communicate it and when, I think, is important. But I think some of the ways that we have nowadays to meet people, such as dating apps or matchmakers, things like that, is if you can kind of put out there before they even connect with you that that's what you're looking for, then people can self-select out of that. Sometimes people are afraid to put that on their dating profile, like, hey, I'm looking for, like a long-term relationship that leads to marriage, whatever that is. Like, that's a great thing to put right up there front and center so that people don't all of a sudden feel like, oh, that I just swiped on this person because they had nothing written and, I didn't really know what they're looking for either. Sorry, let me turn this on.
it's better
Okay.
to have, like you said, this isn't about quantity, it's about quality. And if
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
attracting a bunch of people that aren't interested in commitment,
Yeah.
that's just a waste of your time and your
Exactly.
energy.
Yeah. And that's exactly kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, we're not looking for validation in the dating process. We're looking for a partner. So just having someone like you isn't enough.
That
Like,
is a
you're looking
really,
for,
that's
yeah.
a great point. Great
Mhm.
point. So, what are some insightful questions to ask on a date to determine if we are aligned on our values, our compatibility,
Yeah.
right? Our yeah,
Yeah, so I talk about this a lot in the book, and at the end of every chapter I have, these are the types of questions you want to ask on this date number. So I think that initially a great way, like if you're on a first date, let's say you haven't met on a dating app, so you don't really know specifically what they're looking for, but let's say that you are on a first date and they're asking, a little bit more about your life, and you can share from your perspective kind of what your life looks like and what you want it to look like. Hey, this is kind of what I do now, my work, my family, etc. Hoping in the next few years I can do this X, Y, and Z, find the right person, have a family, whatever that is for you. So a great way is from expressing rather than expecting. And talk about this in the book a lot
mm,
too, is that people can kind of self-select out if like, oh, they're like, actually, I don't want kids in the next 3 years. If you just said, hey, this is what I want, they can kind of say, oh, that's not what I want, rather than you directly kind of asking them, hey, do you want kids in the next 3 years? So I think like a great way to kind of have these conversations is through expressing, and then you can always ask the question kind of after you share as well. Like, hey, my political values are very important to me. This is kind of what I believe. What are your thoughts? Like, kind of sharing a little bit from your perspective opens up that conversation. So it's not just like a one-way interrogation.
exactly.
Mhm.
Somebody in the chat's asking this, and I think I know you've seen this before, but I have confessed to him in the future I would like to have a life together in 5 years. He said he doesn't know if he will want it too, or maybe he needs more time. It's been a long distance relationship, 4 years. That's a long time.
Yeah. So I would probably say that I don't know fully if you've been dating 4 years or some of the details there, but I would say if their vision for the future doesn't align with your vision for the future, then likely you guys aren't compatible. You might have different compatibility, chemistry, etc. But if your vision for what your future is isn't the same as his, and he can communicate that, I think that might be a way to say, maybe we're not aligned in this way. If it's a long distance relationship, that can be really challenging as well because you don't really know what your lives look like in real life, what it looks like when they go grocery shopping, kind of what they do to unwind after work, like these sorts of details. So I always recommend, if you're in a long distance relationship, as much as possible, you intertwining each other in your lives other than just having long phone conversations. So try like a FaceTime date, going shopping at the supermarket, or, try to see each other. I know it's not always feasible, but I would say hopefully at least every like 6 weeks, you're able to actually spend time in person.
Hmm.
Hmm.
What is the most important question to ask myself before
Hmm.
committing to a new relationship?
Yeah. Great question. I love that question. I would say that what you want to do before you're in a long-term relationship is ask yourself, do they kind of meet these main things that I'm looking for? So I talk about in the book kind of these 4 areas you want to assess before you're in a committed relationship. This is vision for the future, any mental health background, or the kind of learning a little bit more about their history with that, relationship history, and their family dynamics, their family of origin dynamics. And once you've kind of gotten that information, asking yourself, everyone has baggage, everyone has things in their life, but asking yourself, like, is this the type of thing that I think I can walk with through life with this person? And I think if you can honestly say yes, then it's good to move forward. If you're not sure, you need more information or validation, that now's the time to ask.
Right. And this is, I really like Christy.
Hmm.
You take the stigma away from like having the most important questions,
Hmm.
like you having conversations that are very important. I know it doesn't make it
Yeah.
easy, but it's like, let's say that you are at that stage where you want commitment with somebody,
Hmm.
but actually there's one or two things that actually that there's quite like concerning, or
Hmm.
maybe
Yeah.
not. I don't know if this is aligned or not.
Hmm.
It's so important, like to get clarity
Hmm.
on that
Yeah,
before
yeah,
committing.
exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that the clarity is the thing that's going to make you feel confident in committing. And if you don't have that, having the permission to seek that. If you feel very uncomfortable asking for that, then it might be a time to ask, is there something that person's doing to make me feel like this topic's off limits or I can't ask this question? And then that might be very telling as well.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Christie Kederian, for joining us today and for giving us so much great advice for
Thank
dating and
you.
finding your partner. I'm going to hold your book up so people can see the cover. 10 Dates to Your Soulmate by Dr. Christie Kederian, a celebrity matchmaker's guide from first swipe to forever. So thank you very much for everything today. And this is going to be
Thank
recorded. So anybody
you.
that wants to rewatch or share it, please do.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Robin. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.